Chapter 277. This was the first time she had taken the initiative to kiss him. Mo Wushang could feel something churning in his heart, as if it was about to burst out of his chest. Even the speed at which he peeled the prawns became faster. Before Shin Yueji could even speak to Jiyu Ruochi, there was already a small mountain of peeled prawns in front of her. Shin Yueji was speechless. The man moved his handsome face closer to her. His intention was clear. Shin Yueji's mouth twitched. She pinched his waist and said, "Shameless." This man was either slow at peeling prawns or he was trying to take advantage of her. Inexplicably being pinched by her, the man's expression is helpless. His aggrieved expression seemed to be saying, "I really don't know how to peel prawns." Shin Yueji piled up the small mountain of prawns in front of her and put one into the man's mouth. The grievance in the man's heart immediately disappeared. He was satisfied with the prawns that the woman had fed him. Ji-Chu could not stand it anymore. He covered his face and reminded her again, "Miss Shin, third young master Ji-Yu has been awake for a long time." "Oh." Shin Yueji's gaze moved away from the man and landed on Jiyu Ruochi, who was in a daze. A gaze as sharp as a glazed knife. Ji-Chu turned his back, shivering. "Can't see me, can't see me." Jiyu Ruochi slowly came back to his senses and realized the situation he was in. His handsome face darkened and he pretended to be calm. "Shin Yueji, what are you trying to do?" "I don't want to do anything. I just want your life." Jiyu Ruochi's eyes widened in shock when he heard this. "What did you just say? Do you know what you're doing?" Even when Jiyu Yuyin told him many times that she wanted Shin Yueji's life, he didn't kill her time and time again. Originally, he planned to get her on the bed and if she performed well, he would hide her in the dark under some other pretext until he was tired of her. However, he did not expect that their positions would be reversed. She wanted to kill him? Shin Yueji's words made him laugh. Although he was panicking, he still looked as calm as a statue. "Shin Yueji, do you know what you're talking about? Do you know who I am? I am the third young master of the Jiyu family. If you dare to kill me, not only will father and mother not take it lying down, even His Majesty will not let your Shin family off." Shin Yueji smiled. "Third young master, are you stupid? From head to toe, you didn't even show your face. Who in the entire capital city would know that you, Jiyu Feng Kai, were kidnapped by me? You, Jiyu Jun Kai, did whatever you wanted in the capital city. You burned, killed, and plundered. You've already made countless enemies. It's only a matter of time before you die. That's because you weren't prepared. My current identity is that of an enemy that you've offended in the capital city, not the daughter of the Shin family, the emperor's imperial concubine. You, Jiyu Yuan Kai was rendered speechless by her words for a long time. Knowing his current situation, he still had Mo Wushang to hold the line. He braced himself and softened his tone of speaking to her. "Shin Guifei, you and I only had some simple small quarrels and do not hold any grudges. Moreover, all these years, it was me who suffered losses because of you and your eldest brother. Have you ever suffered even the slightest bit of loss? If you don't like me, just teach me a lesson." "Why?" Chapter 278. Third young master Jiyu, is there something wrong with your ears? Didn't I tell you just now that I am just an enemy of the capital who wants to kill you? I have nothing to do with the Shin family. Shin Yueji. Jiyu Ruochi glared at her fiercely. "I don't believe that you dare. If you dare to touch me, I will." "Ah!" A blood-curdling scream. He felt a sudden pain in his ear and a warm sensation spread from it. Jiyu Ruochi stared at the bloody ear lying on the ground. His eyes nearly rolled back and he almost fainted on the spot. Ji-Chu poured cold water over him again. He felt a bone-chilling coldness suffocating him. An intense pain spread through his nerves. Jiyu Ruochi's entire body trembled as he squatted on the ground. He curled up into a ball and screamed miserably. "You are not fit to touch me." Mo Wushang narrowed his eyes as he looked at him coldly. His thin lips were cold and he looked like a Rakshasa from the netherworld. No one dared to look at him directly. Especially the black robe and the sharp aura that seemed to look down on everything. "Prince Regent." Jiyu Ruochi covered his empty ear and did not dare to move. He looked at Mo Wushang with fear and dread. He was the one who attacked just now. Only he could do it without anyone noticing. He did not even see his ear being cut off by the wind from his palm. It felt good to have someone protecting her. If someone was rude to her or looked fierce, her man would teach them a lesson for her. Shin Yueji hugged the man's arm obediently and leaned half of her body on his. I heard that Madame Murong likes the food from Phoenix Restaurant. Phoenix Restaurant was the most famous restaurant in the capital. Their dishes were exquisite and every dish was of the highest quality. When Shin Yueji was young, she knew that Murong Yun would come to Phoenix Restaurant for a meal every day. Sometimes, she would even bring the food back to her residence. With her status, she could easily summon the chefs of the Phoenix Restaurant to her mansion, but for some unknown reason, she had to go to great lengths to come in person every time. Once a day, she had her own private room, but it was filled with all the guests of the Phoenix Restaurant. It was as if she had developed a habit of not caring if she could eat them all. Jiu Yukai was startled by Shin Yueji's words. Then, a smile appeared on his face. It was obvious that he had forgotten about the pain of his broken ear. Shin Yueji, my mother will be back soon. If she sees you injuring me, then, is that so? Unfortunately, this consort wants to be seen by her. Shin Yueji got up from Mo Wushang's body and walked in front of him. She looked at him as if she was looking at an ant. The restraints on his body had been formed, but he had lost all of his power. He was just like a cripple, waiting to be trampled upon. Shin Yueji effortlessly picked him up and looked down at the wooden window on the second floor. The streets were bustling with people. Jiu Ruochi's eyes darkened. He opened his mouth and was about to shout, but in the next instant, another wave of intense pain shot through his body. Even his right ear had been cut off. The pain from his left ear attacked him again. Now that his right ear had been cut off, Jiu Ruochi was in so much pain that he rolled on the ground. Shin Yueji looked at him coldly. He was in so much pain that he couldn't control himself. She curled her lips and smiled coldly. She recalled how he had humiliated and taken advantage of her when they were still in the mansion. Compared to this, it was nothing. Chapter 279. Things had gotten out of hand and Murong Yun and the others had noticed it. When they arrived with their men, they found out that she had shamelessly seduced her own younger brother. Little by little, she had done many things. Shin Yueji had not forgotten about it at all. She wanted the members of the Jiu family to die one by one. She wanted them to fall into panic bit by bit and pay the price for what they had done in the past. Third young master, tell me. She moved closer to him and tugged at his messy hair, forcing him to lean against the wooden window. His head almost wanted to crawl out of the window. The man was in so much pain that he was panting heavily. Fresh blood dripped down onto the edge of the bed. Shin Yueji raised her lips and moved closer to him. Her warm breath was something that the man had yearned for many years. Now that his wish had come true, this warm and ambiguous breath made him shiver uncontrollably. His body trembled so violently that he could not even speak clearly. Shin Yueji. I have no enmity with you. Why are you doing this to me? When Madame Murong passes by here, I will slit third young master's neck. When the time comes, blood will spurt from the second floor and splatter onto Madame Murong's body. Tell me, how spectacular would that be? Shin Yueji did not answer his question. Instead, she laughed softly. She would be horrified to see her own son die in front of her. She has the highest status in the world and the most enviable appearance. I wonder how spectacular it would be if her own son's blood dyed her red. The woman's cold and cruel words caused Jiu Ruochi's body to tremble even more violently. He knew that this woman was arrogant and despotic, but he did not know that her methods were so cruel. When she had whispered those words into his ear, he could hear the deep hatred and murderous intent in her voice. That kind of hatred was indescribable. However, he did not know how he had offended her to make her hate him so much that she wanted to kill him and torture him at the same time. Third young master, are you afraid? Shin Yueji distanced herself from him and looked at his pale face from the side. She could not tell if it was because of the pain or because of the fear. His trembling body made him seem like a completely different person from the high and mighty third young master of the Jiyu clan he used to be. Shin Yueji, even if the Jiyu and Shin families have a grudge against each other, if you want to kill me, you have to give me a reason. Jiyu Junkai gritted his teeth. Even though he was trying his best to remain calm, he couldn't stop his voice from trembling. Does young master Jiyu believe in retribution in this world? Jiyu Ruochi narrowed his eyes. Shin Yueji leaned close to him, her warm breath on his bloody ear. Do you know how Jiyu Yuchin was tortured by you all these years, and how she survived until she grew up? When he heard Jiyu Yuechin's name, Jiyu Ruochi's body stiffened and he could not utter a single word for a long time. Your Jiyu clan has been arrogant for so many years, it's time for you to fall. However, you should be glad that you're the first to die. That way, you won't be able to see your Jiyu clan slowly decline from its peak, slowly being spurned by others, slowly becoming a stray dog, helpless, panicking, terrified, and at a loss. Chapter 280. Madame Murong's carriage was heading towards the Phoenix restaurant. She was dressed in a gorgeous red dress, and even after so many years, she still looked like a 17 or 18-year-old girl. Her face was exquisite and she didn't need any makeup to maintain her youthful look. Her head was covered with expensive and gorgeous jewelry, and her red clothes were like fire. Servants carefully supported her from behind. She placed her hand on the maid's hand and stepped down from the carriage in an elegant and dignified manner. The moment he saw Murong Yun's carriage, Jiyu Ruochi was so agitated that his entire body was trembling. The veins in his limbs had been destroyed and his body was drenched in sweat. There were bloodstains everywhere and he was already struggling at death's door. This was the first time in his life that he had been tortured in such a manner. The pain that was enough to destroy the heavens and destroy the earth was something that he would never forget. He saw his mother dressed in a gorgeous dress being escorted out of the carriage by the servants downstairs. His blood was dripping down the stairs. Is it raining? The wet blood dripped onto the body of the servant who was leading the group. She reached out to wipe the wet stains off her face and raised her head. Her eyes widened in horror. The man on the second floor was covered in blood and his ears were dripping with blood. Only his handsome face was still intact and his arms were dangling from the window as if they were boneless. It seemed as if they were about to fall down. Third young master. Finally, she cried out in fear. Murong Yun raised her head and looked towards the second floor. She saw that there was a long gash on Jiyu Ruochi's blood-covered neck. The blood that was spurting out was like a broken dam, pouring down like rain. She just stared at it and forgot to react. When the bright red blood started to pour down, everyone was stunned. The passers-by stopped in their tracks and the streets of the capital were completely blocked. Murong Yun stood downstairs as the blood that was pouring down splashed onto her body and dyed her beautiful face red. Her eyes were bloodshot as she glared at the man hanging on the second floor, struggling at death's door. The passers-by screamed in fear. More and more people started to sigh. Kai. Murong Yun looked at the man's falling body and subconsciously stretched out her hands. The moment the man fell, she rushed up and hugged him tightly in her arms without caring about her manners. Her body was still warm, but the blood all over her body was shocking and frightening. It was unknown how much blood had flowed from her lithe body. Murong Yun's eyes instantly reddened. She patted Jiyu Ruochi's unconscious face and said, Kaya, how are you? Who did this to you? Tell mother. Jiyu Yukai reached out his trembling hand and pointed at the second floor with all his might. He opened his mouth and struggled silently. His eyes were as wide as copper bells and he struggled desperately with his last breath. In the end, he did not say anything and died in Murong Yun's arms. Kaya. Murong Yun called him hoarsely, and her trembling hands kept patting the man's bloodless face. A long bloody wound opened up on his neck, vaguely showing the limb inside. The coldness in his body numbed his limbs. Murong Yun's body was like a broken skeleton, cold and stiff. She carefully held Jiyu Yukai in her arms. Her eyes were filled with hatred and cruelty that could destroy the heavens and the earth. Chapter 281. This was the first time Shen Yueji had seen Murong Yun like this. During those years in the Prime Minister's mansion, she was noble and elegant, just like a fairy who didn't eat the food of the mortal world. Even her own daughter had to stop at the sight of her. Looking at her from afar, she couldn't help but feel a sense of inferiority. She even felt that it was blasphemy to look at such a fairy-like figure. The crowded street was slowly blocked. She stood at the back of the crowd and looked at Murong Yun's scarlet eyes and ferocious face as she angrily scolded the guards around her for surrounding the huge Phoenix restaurant. Whether it was the hidden guards or the guards she brought, for a moment, the pedestrians and guests of the Phoenix restaurant all looked terrified. She felt a chill in her heart. It turned out that Murong Yun also had a motherly side. It turned out that she also knew that her child was a piece of flesh that had fallen from her body. It turned out that she would also shed tears and get angry at others because of her son's death. It turned out that her frail body seemed to be unable to stand steadily for a moment. The man next to her supported her. She leaned into the man's arms and listened to his strong heartbeat. When she was framed, she did not hesitate to slap herself in front of everyone, saying that she, Murong Yun, could not give birth to such a shameless daughter. She knelt in front of the emperor and begged Feng Joqing to kill her, saying that it was a disgrace to look at such a daughter. Only the heavens knew how much she looked forward to this mother, how much she hoped that she would be able to take a look at her. She didn't know what she had done wrong, what had made her so dissatisfied, so much so that even though they were both children, she still didn't like her. Sometimes, she wondered if she was really her biological daughter. It was because her doubts had been confirmed that she was indeed her own flesh and blood that she could not understand. Why, she could be so kind to them, but why was she so cold to her, so disliked and hated her? Soon, the paleness on her face returned to normal, and there was no longer a trace of longing and expectation in her dark eyes. She looked at Murong Yun, who was surrounded by the crowd, and listened to her hysterical cries. The corner of her mouth curled up into a smile. This was just a small gift for the Jiyu family, a bigger gift was yet to come. It's getting late, we should return to the general's residence. Looking up from the man's arms, Shen Yueji looked at him and suddenly smiled. Mo Wushang's slender fingers caressed her small face that was pretending to be strong. His dark eyes were deep and his long arms held her tightly in his embrace. Jia, have you ever trusted me? Shen Yueji didn't understand why he suddenly asked such a question. She narrowed her eyes and asked, "What's wrong?" He kissed her earlobe and said softly, "Believe that Gu's love for you is pure and not mixed with benefits." "Have you ever believed me?" Shen Yueji didn't say anything. She pursed her lips. "Do you believe it?" She wasn't against being together with Mo Wushang, but she knew that in the depths of her heart, she was guarded against him. Because in this world, there wasn't a man who would run over to pester another woman after a few days of loving her, telling her that his love for her was real, and that he could give up everything for her, including his life. But at the same time, it was because she trusted Feng Joqing's words too much and believed in his deep feelings for her that she ended up being used by him and died tragically. She didn't even protect the two people she cared about the most. Chapter 282. She was afraid. She didn't dare to. When Mo Wushang said that he loved her, said that he liked her, said that he was willing to give up everything for her, she was touched. After calming down, she would ask herself repeatedly, what was worth his sacrifice? For her, Mo Wushang's love for her was inexplicable, without any reason. She bowed her head and didn't speak. The man insisted on letting her speak. He lifted her chin with his cold fingertips. Jia. What about the regent? Shen Yueji looked up at him with a rare seriousness in her eyes. Will you lie to me? The man frowned and shook his head firmly. No. Good. She raised her lips and smiled. If the regent doesn't lie to me, I'm willing to treat you sincerely. If you lie to me, you've helped me a lot before. No matter what your purpose is, from now on, we'll never see each other again. Because of the deception, Shen Yueji didn't want to give her heart to someone else again. She didn't want to end up like her predecessor. But she couldn't refuse Mo Wushang's love for her. This kind of love was too deep, more sincere than what Feng Joqing gave her. Since this was what he wanted, she could try to accept him. As she said, no matter what his purpose was, this was the only return she could give him. Hearing this, the man's dark eyes were calm after a storm, without a trace of emotion. He finally sighed and got into the carriage with Shin Yueji in his arms. What he wanted, even if it wasn't equal to her love for him, he only hoped that she had him in her heart. What he wanted was her love and her heart. Not a return. As they sat in the carriage and left, a wooden window on the third floor of the Drunken Joy building opened gently. A handsome man's face was revealed. Shangwon Yu's gentle face was a little more dignified. He looked thoughtfully at the direction where Shin Yueji left. Few people knew Mo Wushang's feelings for Jiyu Yuqin, the eldest daughter of the Jiyu family. Most of the aristocratic families in the capital knew. But he had seen Mo Wushang's attitude towards Shin Yueji. But just now, his fingertips rotated, and his smooth fingertips turned red, and he felt waves of pain. Jia! Is it really you? Why do you give me such a strange feeling now? Thinking of the strange look in her eyes when she looked at him yesterday, Shangwon Yu felt a throbbing pain in his heart. Last night, he stumbled back to the mansion alone from the Drunken Joy building and locked himself in his room to think about many things. Thinking of their past, thinking of how she had bared her fangs and brandished her claws at him. General's mansion coming down from the carriage, Shin Yueji raised her head to look at the big red lanterns hanging high on the door plaque and the red cloth strips on both sides of the door. It was a festive scene. Her mouth twitched as she looked at the man behind her. Did I come to the wrong door? The answer was non-committal. Mo Wushang held her hand and led her into the residence. Shuang Shi had been waiting at the door for a long time. When he saw her come in, his face was full of joy. Miss, you're back. The general heard that Jiyu Mingkai was killed in the Phoenix House, so he's beating gongs and drums to celebrate. He's even hired people to line up at the Phoenix House to sing and cheer. Shin Yueji's face darkened as she listened to the sounds of him practicing his voice coming from the manor. Chapter 283. She pondered for a moment and said, "Don't make too much noise. There's no need to sing. It's not appropriate to sing anything at the moment. Why don't you ask father to give them some money and bring the celebration to the streets?" Hearing this, Shuang Shi's eyes lit up. Miss was so smart. Why didn't she think of this? The third young master of the Jiyu family had just died. The whole Jiyu family must be in mourning and wearing white silk. At this time, a few people passing by on the street were playing gongs and drums. It was very festive. Just like this, the Jiyu family could be angry to death. No matter how powerful they were in the capital, they couldn't stop the young masters from getting married and the girls from getting married, could they? With Shin Yueji's kind reminder, when Shuang Shi went to tell Shin He, his eyes immediately lit up and he slapped his thigh to do it. Then, Murong Yun held her son's body in her arms and looked for the suspect in the street angrily. On the other side, groups of people came to greet and marry the bride, playing and playing. Just thinking about it, she could imagine how terrifying Murong Yun's murderous face was. After a tiring day, Shin Yueji returned to her room and fell asleep on the bed. She pillowed the man's shoulder and soon fell asleep. After sleeping for nearly an hour, she opened her eyes and the first thing she saw was the man's dark eyes. She left the man's arm and sat up slowly. She rubbed her eyes and looked out the door. The light in the room was a little dusty. It was obviously late. She got out of bed, walked to the door, opened it, and saw Shuang Shi tiptoeing to look inside. As a result, when she opened the door, she almost stumbled and fell to the ground. Miss, you're awake." Shuang Shi looked at her eagerly. Glancing at her, Shin Yueji nodded. Shuang Shi didn't dare to look inside, but looked at her and pouted. Seeing her like this, Shin Yueji frowned. She followed her to a long corridor and asked, "What's wrong?" "Young Master Shangwon is here." "So be it," Shin Yueji said disapprovingly. "Miss, he came here because of you." Knowing that Miss is resting, young Master Shangwon accompanied the general and madam to talk in the guest hall. Miss has slept for so long, but he did not show any signs of leaving. Moreover, general and madam have the intention to facilitate the marriage between Miss and him, so it's obvious that they can't just ask him to leave. If Miss doesn't go to see him, I'm afraid young Master Shangwon won't leave. These words put Shin Yueji in a difficult position. She turned her head and subconsciously looked towards the room. Double happiness. You know that Mo Wushang is here. He's such a petty person. If I offend him, I won't have a good ending. Compared to offending Shangguan Yu, Shen Yueji was more afraid of offending Mo Wushang. She did not have any feelings for Shangguan Yu, and she had only met him once. However, Mo Wushang was different. He was a man who was involved in both of her bodies. She was also afraid of the regent. Shuang, she whispered in her heart. But what about young Master Shangguan? He was infatuated with Miss, but Miss had never looked him in the eye. Miss, according to young Master Shangguan, if Miss doesn't see him today, he won't leave. Chapter 284. Shen Yueji spread her hands, shrugged indifferently, and yawned. I'm hungry after waking up. Go and prepare some food for me. Shuang, she grabbed her hand. Miss, there is a lot of food in the guest hall, ready-made. Shen Yueji narrowed her eyes. This girl, it was clear that she wanted her to see Shangguan Yu. Forget it. She nodded. Let's go to the main hall. Hearing this, Shuang, she was happy. She finally persuaded the miss, and she could get a lot of money from the general. The general's painstaking teaching was not in vain. Guest hall. Shen Yueji leisurely walked into the room and casually found an empty chair to sit down on. During this time, she didn't look at Father Shen and Mother Shen who were sitting on the high seat. She didn't even look at the man dressed in white sitting opposite her. She picked up a piece of cake and put it in her mouth, and then drank a cup of tea. I heard from Shuang Shi that there is food here. Where is it? Seeing her coming, Shen he was stunned at first, and then he laughed and ordered people to quickly bring food to the place where she was sitting. My daughter, you're awake? Yes. Shen Yueji answered absent-mindedly. Look at you. Yue waited for you for 2 hours, but you didn't get tired of it. You didn't even greet me when you came. Shen Qiu scolded her in a low voice. Her words were gentle, and her expression was full of love, without a trace of anger. Hearing this, Shen Yueji glanced at her, and then looked at the man in white with a gentle smile on his lips. Didn't child Shangguan just come yesterday? Why do you have time to come today? Are you here to visit father and mother? The man smiled slightly. I'm here to visit uncle and aunt, and also to see Jie. It's rare for Jie to go out of the palace, so I want to take Jie around the capital. Yesterday, child Shangguan took me around the capital. Shangguan Yu chuckled. Yesterday doesn't count. Something happened on the way, so I couldn't take Jie to enjoy the beautiful scenery of the capital. It's my fault. I'm familiar with everything in the capital, even if I'm in the palace. Moreover, I haven't been in the palace for long. I wasn't really interested in the things in the capital. No matter how I strolled around, it was still the same. There was nothing to admire. But young Master Shangguan, from your Shangguan mansion to the general's mansion, you must have traveled a lot, right? Shangguan Yu hesitated for a moment and could no longer maintain the gentle smile on his face. Shen Yueji's resistance and dislike towards him were all displayed on her face. She didn't even give him the simplest pretense. Jie, I have something to tell you in private. Oh. Shen Yueji's hand that was holding the chopsticks paused. Suddenly, she sent a piece of meat into her mouth as if there was no one else around. She narrowed her eyes and said, what words can't be said in front of father and mother? Uncle, auntie, could you allow Yu to speak with Jie alone for a moment? Shangguan Yu didn't reply to her. Instead, he got up and respectfully bowed to Father Shen and Mother Shen, who were sitting on the high seat. His expression was so serious, and his appearance was famous for being handsome and gentle. Shen He and Shen Qiu were more or less partial to him in their hearts. Thinking of their daughter's attitude towards him, they sighed in their hearts and got up to leave. After the two of them left, only he and Shen Yueji were left in the large guest hall. It was so quiet that it was a little strange. Chapter 285. She frowned even more deeply. She subconsciously felt that the Shangguan Yu of today and the Shangguan Yu of yesterday were two completely different people. She did not know why, but when his gaze fell on her this time, even if she did not raise her head to look, she could feel his scrutinizing gaze on her. Yesterday's gaze was filled with longing and deep affection. But today, apart from scrutinizing her, Even that pair of smiling eyes did not contain much affection. She did not feel this way when she first met him. But now, Shin Yueji realized that this man was not someone who could be easily fooled. She slightly straightened her body, put down her bowl and chopsticks, and lightly took a sip of tea. Father and mother have already gone out. Young Master Shangguan, if you want to say something, just say it directly. There's no need to beat around the bush. Today, I saw what Jie did to Jiyu Ruochi in the Phoenix House. Saw it. Shin Yueji looked at him with a smile that was not a smile. The second floor of the Phoenix House was personally chosen by Mo Wushang, and no one else could enter. Even if the Jiyu family wanted to find out who killed Jiyu Ruochi, they would not be able to find Mo Wushang. But Shangguan knew, he said that he saw it. She did not have any extra expression on her face. She still glanced at him with a smile that was not a smile. So what if I saw it? This kind of method is not like Jie's style. Shangguan Yu looked at her, his smile no longer on his face. Although you are a flamboyant person, you would not use such a cruel method to kill someone. The Jiyu and Shin families are enemies in the capital, but they would not make such a big fuss in private. Jie had disputes with Jiyu Ruochi before, but she only taught him a harsh lesson. She had never thought of taking his life. But this time, from the intense hatred in your eyes, you clearly feel that you are still dissatisfied with how you treated Jiyu Ruochi. From what young Master Shangguan said, it seems that you understand me very well. No, I understand Jie, not you. Shin Yueji narrowed her eyes dangerously. What do you mean by that? Shangguan Yu looked straight into her eyes, meticulously not letting go of any trace of panic that flashed across her face. But to his disappointment, from the beginning to the end, Shin Yueji's expression was calm and indifferent. Not to mention panic, there was not even a trace of evasion or surprise. This caused the suspicions that had arisen in his heart to be at a loss for what to do. Why was she so calm? If she really wasn't Shin Yueji as he had guessed, then she should have some expression on her face instead of being so indifferent, as if she hadn't heard what he had said. It was more like he wasn't talking to her. She was just a bystander. You are not Shin Yueji. If I'm not Shin Yueji, then who am I? Gentleman Shangguan, you cannot conclude that I am not the eldest daughter of the Shin family just because my attitude towards you is completely different from before. I know Jie. Jie's methods aren't that cruel. She may look flamboyant on the surface, but she's actually kind inside. Kind? Shin Yueji sneered. It seems that young Master Shangguan still hasn't learned from the thousands of times I whipped you. Her words caused Shangguan Yu's eyes to freeze and his pupils to contract. She remembered that it was thousands of lashes. Chapter 286. Shin Yueji looked at him and laughed self-deprecatingly. A man who wanted to take advantage of me and take over my body, and Lord Shangguan said that I am kind. Shouldn't I kill him to vent my anger? Or does Lord Shangguan think that my body should be defiled by him for nothing? Even if I knew that he wanted to take advantage of me, should I not lower myself to his level? Should I continue to spare him and give him a chance to ruin me in the future? Jie! I don't mean that. You don't mean that. Then what do you mean? Shangguan Yu, people will grow up eventually. You can think of me as a young and naive person who only knew how to rely on my father and mother's love to do whatever I want in the capital. If I was dissatisfied with someone, I just whipped them. If I was unhappy with someone, I just whipped them. As for the so-called kindness, no one is truly kind. Especially after I entered the palace, a kind person will not live to the end. Sooner or later, the Jiyu and Shin families will reveal their cards. On the surface, what you see is that they are living in harmony, and only the citizens of the capital talk about the relationship between the Jiyu and Shin families, but it has never reached the point of fighting. But in private, who knows how many people of the Shin family have already lost their lives to the hands of the Jiyu family. Many of these things, what you see may not be true, what you hear may not be true, but what really happened is true, no one can doubt it. Looking at his handsome and gentle face, she smiled slightly and walked in front of him. Under his surprised gaze, she took his hand and put it on her face. The smooth touch was what he had longed for many years. In the past, he could only look at her from afar, thinking that even when she was asleep, he did not dare to violate her. Now, his longing for many years had come true. His hand was on her face, feeling the tenderness and softness of her skin. His voice was a little hoarse as he called her softly. Shin Yueji curled her lips and said lightly, Lord Shangwon, don't you doubt my identity? Then I will give you a chance to prove it. If someone is impersonated, there is no doubt that it is just a mask. Didn't Lord Shangwon hide it well enough? Those people sent by the Jiyu clan last night, you must have personally gotten rid of them, right? The Jiyu family's guards are highly skilled in martial arts, but young Master Shangwon didn't even need to exert any effort. From this, it can be seen that young Master Shangwon's martial arts are superior. You should also be able to distinguish the effect of the mask and the real skin on my face, right? She took his hand and rubbed it against her face. Young Master Shangwon, why don't you touch it and see for yourself whether my face is real or fake? In any case, she was reborn into the body of the original owner. Shin Yueji was not afraid that he would be able to guess such an unimaginable thing. Shangwon Yu's eyes were deep and serene. His large palm gently stroked her face. Not to mention a mask, there was not even the slightest flaw. His hands were trembling, and he looked at her with eyes full of pity and guilt. Did young Master Shangwon find anything? Shin Yueji removed his hand from her face and smiled. She then put her hand on her waist and untied her belt. Shangwon Yu was startled. Shin Yueji took off her coat in front of him. She untied half of her inner coat, revealing her white back, and turned her back to him. Chapter 287. Instead, she showed him the pattern on the back. Ever since I was born, there has been a pattern on my back. Not many people know about this. If you think that a pattern can be faked, why don't you touch it yourself and see if I drew it or if I carved it on it? His eyes were filled with endless pain. Shangwon Yu suddenly pulled her to him. He put the coat on her and held her tightly in his arms. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to doubt you. It's just. I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I won't do it again. I won't do it again. Shin Yueji didn't push him away and let him hold her. Listening to him talking to himself with guilt, she sighed after a long time. Now that young Master Shangwon has confirmed it, do you still doubt my identity? No, I think the reason why young Master Shangwon came to the General's mansion today and didn't leave for so long is to confirm whether I am the real Shin Yueji or not. Now that young Master Shangwon has confirmed what you wanted to confirm, can you leave now? Hearing her strange tone, Shangwon Yu knew that he couldn't leave at this moment. If he left, he was afraid that his relationship with Jia would become even more estranged. He used his own strength to make a silent struggle. He hugged Shin Yueji very tightly, so tightly that it seemed like he would never let go. Jia, do you hate me so much in your heart? You said you don't like weak scholars, so I practiced martial arts for you. I want to become stronger so that I can be qualified to stand by your side and protect you. No matter how much I have suffered, no matter how hard it is to practice martial arts, my heart is full of satisfaction when I think of you. Yesterday you left with the Prince Regent. I was very sad. I stumbled around aimlessly in the capital city. At night, I entered the Drunken Joy House. When he mentioned the Drunken Joy House, his tone became a little cautious. He hugged her and whispered into her ear, I originally thought that I would do as you said, have 3 wives and 4 concubines, and casually find a woman to marry. Perhaps we are not suitable for each other. You are already married, and there is no longer any possibility between us. The women of the Drunken Joy Pavilion are all extremely beautiful. Even the woman who served me last night was a rare beauty. However, when her hand touched my body, I felt an unprecedented sense of disgust. I subconsciously thought of you. I hated them all. No matter what kind of beautiful face they had, I only thought of you. I don't have any feelings for them. I don't have any feelings for them. Jia. I really can't let you go. I really like you. I can do anything for you, even die. You don't have to respond to me, but don't treat me like a stranger. It will hurt my heart more. I just want to stay by your side as a guardian. I want to watch you from afar and see you happy. This is a kind of satisfaction for me. I don't dare to think about anything else. I only hope, that you won't refuse me such a simple request and satisfy me. Chapter 288. Why do you hate me so much? You don't want to. You don't even want to look at me coldly. I'd rather you be like before, beating me with a whip when you hate me, and yelling at me to get lost when you don't want to see me. I'm willing even if you humiliate me. Don't look at me with such a strange look. My heart hurts. Shin Yueji's head hurt again when she heard the man's hoarse voice. She rubbed her eyebrows and struggled from the man's embrace. She tidied up her messy clothes indifferently. She didn't look at him again from the beginning to the end. Shangwon Yu stopped her when he saw her turn around and leave without saying a word to him. Shin Yueji just stopped and didn't look back at him. Young Master Shangwon, I've said it before. I'm married and the Emperor's woman. If you keep pestering me like this, not only will your Shangwon family be implicated, you will also implicate my Shin family. Don't compare yourself with the regent. His power in Feng country is on par with the Emperor's. What about your Shangwon family? You're a monarch and an official. Besides, your Shangwon family isn't even an official. How can you compare yourself with the regent? Are you really so heartless? Shangwon Yu looked at her with a pained expression. Shin Yueji smiled. I'm not the heartless one. It's you, Shangwon Yu. You always know that I don't have any feelings for you. It's been like this since we were young, when we grew up, and even now. I'm already married, but you're still pestering me. Don't you know why the first daughter of the Jiyu family, the former empress of Feng country, was executed by the emperor? Shangwon Yu stopped. His face was extremely pale as he stared at her blankly. This time, he did not call out to her again. Instead, he watched as she left resolutely, without the slightest hesitation. He should have known, she was so disgusted and indifferent to him. No matter how hard he tried, she couldn't see any good in him. Even if he took out his heart and showed it to her, she would probably sneer at him with a disapproving face. She would even laugh at his stupidity, laugh at his lowliness. Shangwon Yu's gentle face instantly turned ferocious and horrible. He clenched his big hand, and his black eyes were filled with intense hatred. Shin Yueji, I've been so good to you, I've dug my heart out for you, I've let you hit me, I've let you humiliate me. For you, I went to learn martial arts. For you, I gave up literature to learn martial arts. I suffered a lot, but every time I think of you, I feel that everything I endured was worth it. Originally, I thought that I wanted to give you a surprise after learning martial arts, but you still didn't take it seriously. In your eyes, you couldn't see my efforts. In your eyes, you felt that my efforts brought you burdens and disgust. Shin Yueji, you don't want to see me. No matter how hard I try, how much I try to make you happy, you will never look up to me. The coldness in his eyes grew colder and more intense. His white robe seemed to be stained with dust, as cold as frost. You forced me to, you forced me to do this. It's all because of you. Why can't you see how good I am to you, how I love you, how I like you? Can't you see my effort? One day, you will know. You will know that in this world, only I treat you sincerely. You will understand. You will. Chapter 289. Miss, where is young Master Shangwon? She came out of the guest hall. She didn't see Shangwon Yu by her side, so she asked in confusion. Shin Yueji didn't look at her. She walked past her and said, from now on, there is no Shangwon Yu, no matter father or mother. Tell them later that they can see Shangwon Yu, but don't take the liberty to let him come in to see me. There is no possibility between him and me. And before he left, Shangwon Yu's eyes were full of hatred. It was a kind of hatred that he wanted to destroy because he couldn't get what he wanted. She could feel that if she still had some sympathy for Shangwon Yu before, that little bit of sympathy had completely disappeared at this moment. The so-called love, if you can't get it, you destroy it and hurt it. This kind of feeling made her feel disgusted and conflicted. On the way back to her courtyard, she saw the man in black sitting on the soft couch. When he heard her opening the door, he sensed something and looked at her with his dark eyes. It was a pair of black eyes that were filled with vigor. Amidst the loneliness, there was a hint of cleanliness, without any impurities. Shin Yueji suddenly felt that the man in front of her was much more pleasing to the eye. She walked towards him, naturally hugged the man's neck and sat on his lap. "You're awake." Mo Wushang didn't say anything. He picked up a pastry and put it next to her mouth. Shin Yueji cooperated and took a small bite. Then, he stuffed the rest of the pastry into his mouth and repeated this process. He ate about 4 or 5 pastries, and he only ate after Shin Yueji had bitten off each bite. Shin Yueji's mouth twitched. "You're using me to test the poison. Ji-er is sweeter than Osmanthus cake." The man put his mouth next to her and kissed her delicate lips. "How long have you been awake?" "I woke up after you left." "After I left?" She didn't leave for long. Generally speaking, she just went to her parents' place for a meal and chatted with Shangguanyu for a while. She thought and looked at Mo Wushang. "You haven't eaten dong. Brother, have you?" What came into view was a man who was tied up from head to toe, his mouth stuffed with food and trying his best to make muffled sounds. Shin Yueji jumped up from Mo Wushang's body in shock. She walked to the front of the bed and looked down at the man who was in a sorry state. She stepped forward and untied him, removing the restraints in his mouth. As soon as he could move, Shin Yukai immediately hugged her slender waist and cried his heart out. "Little sister, I thought I would never see you again." Sob sob, he bawled, tears and snot falling like rain. Halfway through his tears, he felt the cold, murderous gaze from the other side. His hands trembled and he immediately let go of Shin Yueji's waist. Shin Yueji saw that he was timid, looking like a bullied wife. She then looked at the man behind her, who was dressed in a noble manner, drinking tea as if nothing had happened. She narrowed her eyes. "What's going on?" Shin Yukai lowered her head and sobbed softly, not daring to speak. Shin Yueji lifted his chin and looked into his tearful eyes. "I'm asking you, what's going on? Do you still want me to stand up for you?" "Yes." Shin Yukai gritted his teeth and spat out a word. Chapter 290. A sister who was married off was like spilled water. Thinking back to how they were hugging each other so intimately and biting into the pastry, it was as if they could not be more intimate, as if they were about to become one. Ever since he was young, he had never shared a piece of pastry with his little sister. She said that she disliked his saliva for being dirty. Sob sob sob. Thinking of this, Shin Yukai burst into tears again. He lay on the bed, covered his head with the brocade quilt, and cried his heart out. Why did she think that his brother's saliva was dirty? That man's wasn't clean either. Sob sob. With such a brother, Shin Yueji was at her wit's end. She tried to pull the quilt on his head. Shin Yukai grabbed it tightly, as if he was going to choke himself to death. 2 black lines slid down his forehead. Shin Yueji stretched out her leg and kicked him. "Come out." Sob sob sob. From under the quilt came the man's dying cry. Shin Yueji was completely speechless. She glared at the man behind her who looked as if nothing had happened. She stared at him for a while, then walked in front of him and put her hands on her waist. "Mo Wushang, what did you do to my brother?" The man took a sip of tea, raised his dark eyes, and stared at her for a while. There was a flash of grievance in his dark eyes. He looked away, leaving half of his handsome face to her. Shin Yueji's mouth twitched. She walked in front of him and stared at his pillously handsome face. "Tell me the truth. Look at how badly my brother is crying. Normally, I can't even bear to bully him. Just now, you tied him up and stuffed things into his mouth. Also, there's a bruise on his face. What's going on?" "He hit me." The 3 words came out of the man's mouth slowly. "He hit you." Shin Yueji was stunned. She looked at the man who had stopped crying and was eavesdropping on their conversation. Probably because of her gaze, Shin Yukai rolled onto the bed with both his legs. He was wrapped tightly in the brocade quilt. According to Shin Yuechi's style of seeking death, he would definitely do it. In the past, although he was afraid of Mo Wushang's identity, he had offended Mo Wushang many times because of her. Now that he knew that Mo Wushang was with her, he was still thinking of ways to mess with him. However, it was obvious that he didn't manage to deal with Mo Wushang as he wished. Instead, He was the one who had been outmaneuvered. Shin Yueji felt sorry for him and went to check if he had any wounds. Quick, let me see if he's hurt anywhere. After hearing her words, the man's big hand under the loose and elegant robe saw her face full of worry. His thin lips slightly pursed, and a blood mark appeared on his bright and clean palm. He raised his hand, and the wide sleeves of his robe rolled to his arm, revealing a long bloodstain on his white palm. Shin Yueji grabbed his hand and saw the blood flowing out of his palm. Her brows furrowed even deeper. She hurriedly found gauze to wrap the man's hand. Only when the blood stopped flowing did she let out a long sigh of relief. At that moment, her gaze towards Shin Yukai was filled with malice. Shin Yukai was so frightened that his entire body trembled, and he groaned in his heart. Mo Wushang, you shameless man. He admitted that he had come to find Ji-er. However, when he came in, he didn't see Ji-er, but Mo Wushang, who was lying on the bed. Chapter 291. Who knew that this man would be so vigilant even though he was asleep? Before his fist could land on his face, that pair of eyes that could freeze the heavens and earth suddenly opened. Before his fist could even touch the corner of his clothes, his entire body was sent flying by a powerful internal force. Then, he fell to the ground awkwardly. Before he could get up from the ground, a cold blade was on his neck. What followed was, Ji-chu tied him up and threw him on the bed. During this period, he cried and screamed for help, and then his mouth was gagged. This sinister and despicable man. He didn't even touch a strand of his hair. Who the hell knew how his claw got hurt? It had been so long, and the blood on his palm was obviously from his claw. Ah! Shin Yukai rolled on the bed with the quilt. I'm innocent. I'm innocent. I was the one who was beaten. Why are you blaming me? Ouch. Shin Yueji angrily threw a cup of tea at him, hitting his head. The warm tea dripped down from Shin Yuechi's head. Shin Yukai instantly stopped talking. He wiped the tears off his face, got down from the bed, and sat on the round chair opposite Mo Wushang with a serious face. Prince Regent, let's talk. Not understanding what he was up to, Shin Yueji went forward to pull the man's hand. Let's go, don't worry about him. Let's go to the street and watch the show. Mo Wushang got up obediently and let her pull him away. Shin Yukai was speechless. Was he that transparent? No matter how patient he was, he had completely lost his patience after being sided by his little sister. Shin Yukai strode forward with a gloomy face, blocking their way. Prince Regent, don't you think it's ridiculous that you're hiding behind my sister? Hearing this, Mo Wushang glanced at him faintly and quickly looked away. His indifferent eyes seemed to be calm, but it made Shin Yukai subconsciously shiver. He swallowed hard. When he thought of his little sister not being intimate with him after she got a man, he felt as if there was a knife scratching his heart. His martial arts are above mine. I don't even have the strength to fight back, little sister. Don't believe him. He's lying to you. He was the one who hit me. I know. Shin Yueji raised her eyebrows slightly. What? Hearing her words, Shin Yukai widened her eyes. Little sister knows. Even the tall figure of the man she was protecting behind suddenly stiffened when he heard this. Shin Yueji turns around and pats the man's handsome face. Don't worry, I will protect you, be good. Shin Yukai, his heart started to bubble with jealousy again. Even though his little sister knew about it, she still sided with him. The Prince Regent doesn't want to live in his own mansion and is willing to stay in our general's mansion. He is a guest, not to mention that father and mother have already regarded him as the future master of our general's mansion. Big brother, I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to turn a big problem into a small one and a small one into nothing. Think about it. She looked at him with a straight face and said righteously, according to father and mother's protection of the regent, even if he hit you, father and mother still have to worry and ask 1 or 2 questions to prevent the regent from dirtying his hands. If father and mother know that you sneaked into my room today and waited for an opportunity to hurt him, do you know what your end will be? Compared to being jealous of his little sister with a man, Shin Yukai was more afraid of his 2 parents' strange punishment methods. Chapter 292. He lowered his head, sobbing, Little sister, why are you so favored even though we're both daughters? It's like I'm adopted. The problem was that even Mo Wushang's status was higher than his. His father and mother looked at him as if he was their own son. Shen Yueji patted his shoulder solemnly. In the end, it might be because Big Brother has done nothing all these years. You only know how to cause trouble everywhere and cause trouble for father and mother. Shen Yuechi's face was bitter. But you forced me to do all these. She raised her eyebrows. Did I? Shen Yukai did not speak. He admitted that he hadn't made much contribution to the general's residence all these years, but his little sister hadn't either. If he had caused so much trouble that he couldn't even count his fingers, then the trouble that Shen Yueji had caused was something that she would never be able to repay in this lifetime. The key was that no matter how much trouble she caused, his parents would only praise and praise her. But he was different. He would either scold or force things into his mouth. The unbearable past made Shen Yukai cover his face and cry bitterly. Now, even his only little sister was no longer on his side. His life was already very bleak, and there was no hope left for him. He resolutely wiped the tears off his face and strode out. Big Brother, Drunken Joy Loft is a good place. There are wine and beauties there. If Big Brother feels bitter, you can go there to relax. I believe the beauties in Drunken Joy Loft will be happy to hear Big Brother talk. Hearing this, Shen Yukai turned around and glared at her. Just you wait, I'll bring you 10 or even 100 sisters-in-law tomorrow, so that your throat will be dry. When Shen Yukai left, he happened to meet Double Happiness, who was outside. Seeing his red and swollen eyes, Double Happiness was shocked. Young master, what's wrong with you? Did Miss bully you again? After being sullen for an entire day, someone finally asked him what was wrong. Shen Yuechi's tears, which had just stopped, instantly flowed out like an endless stream of spring water. She hugged Shuangxi and cried her heart out. Little Gigi only has little Shong in her heart now. Little Kai Kai doesn't exist anymore. Double Happiness. Little Gigi. Little Shong. Little Kai Kai. Shuangxi's mouth twitched. Was this how he addressed his miss, the Prince Regent, and himself? Eldest young master, weren't you most afraid of the Prince Regent? How dare you find trouble with the Regent? Aren't you afraid of angering the Regent and throwing you out of the general's mansion? She knew what Shen Yukai was thinking. Wasn't he just taking advantage of the fact that the Regent liked her miss and wanted to take revenge for the past personal grudges? In the end, he didn't manage to get his revenge. Instead, he was taught a lesson, right? Shuangxi sighed. The eldest young master was not as smart as her. She had suffered a lot when she followed the young miss, but now she only knew how to flatter. She only listened to what the Regent liked. No matter what the reason was, as long as she knew that the Regent had her miss in his heart, it was enough. Look at the Regent's attitude towards her now. By the way, eldest young master, the madam and the general have been looking for you for a day. Father and mother are looking for me. Shen Yuechi's eyes lit up as soon as he heard the two elders calling him. He asked in anticipation, "Why are they looking for me? Did you tell me why?" Chapter 293. She looked at the unconscious man who suddenly fell to the ground. Shuangxi was shocked. She patted his face, but there was no reaction. She mumbled something under her breath. Madam was right. She knew that young master would faint from anger. Fortunately, Madam said that even if young master fainted, she would still carry you over. She held the man's arm with one hand and put the other on her shoulder. She carried him half on her shoulder and walked towards the main hall. The corner of Shen Yueji's mouth curled up into a smile when she saw the scene outside. Although the way people got along in the Shen mansion was weird, there was laughter everywhere. Especially Shen Yukai. No matter how noisy he was, he could not hide the joy and kindness in his eyes. He said that he was jealous, but in fact, he just wanted to help her test the extent of Mo Wushang's feelings for her. Thinking of the original owner of this body, she wondered how happy her life was. Now even the man she had been longing for, secretly fell in love with her. She closed her eyes. Her waist was wrapped in a strong arm. The man's warm and cold voice was close to her ear, hoarse and low. "Didn't you say that you would go to the streets with me to watch the show?" Hearing this, Shen Yueji opened her eyes and looked back at him. She smiled. "Yes, we are going to watch a good show." The carriage stopped at the side of the Phoenix House. Looking at the former bustling Phoenix House, it was now an empty building. Did you hear? Today, something happened to the Jiyu clan's third young master in the Phoenix Pavilion. In a fit of anger, the Prime Minister ordered people to seal the Phoenix Pavilion. Even the owner of the Phoenix Pavilion was killed by the Prime Minister in a fit of rage. It has only been a day, but it has spread like wildfire in the capital. Who doesn't know that the Jiyu family's third young master is loved by Madame Murong and Prime Minister Jiyu? Now, Madame Murong has to watch her own son die in front of her. It is a pity for the boss of the Phoenix House. Who said it isn't? Not only the boss of the Phoenix House, even the staff of the Phoenix House have been detained by the Jiyu family. I'm afraid they won't be able to escape death. I heard that Madame Murong loved to eat at the Phoenix House. She was an old acquaintance with the boss of the Phoenix House. Now, for her own son, she has fallen out with him. Even the boss of the Phoenix House was implicated. Shun Yueji frowned as she listened to the whispers of the passers-by. She had never imagined that Jiyu Ruochi's death would implicate the Phoenix Tower. The reputation of the Phoenix restaurant in the capital had been there for some years. Ever since she could remember, it had always stood tall in the capital. Murong Yun couldn't put down the dishes here. Every day, she would personally come here. With the Jiyu family's presence, it could be seen how famous the Phoenix restaurant was in the capital. However, Shun Yueji did not sympathize with the matter of the Phoenix Tower being implicated. Most of the people involved were just some upper-class people who looked down on the lower class and were just mercenaries. She pinched a piece of pastry into her mouth and smiled slowly. It seems that I can't eat the food of the Phoenix restaurant. Why don't the regent choose another place? Shall we fill our stomachs first? Hearing this, the man lowered his eyes to look at her and gently reached out to wipe the cake residue from the corner of her mouth. Chapter 294. He was trying to lure her to his Prince Regent's mansion with just a few words. She couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. Shun Yueji opened the curtain and shouted to Ji Chu, who was driving the horse outside, to Drunken Pleasure House. Although Drunken Pleasure House was the biggest brothel in the capital, it was still quiet during the day. It was okay to just eat in a private room. Ji Chu dutifully parked the carriage at the entrance of Drunken Pleasure House and opened the curtain. Miss Shun, please. Shun Yueji jumped out of the carriage first. After Shun Yueji jumped out, Ji Chu closed the curtain directly, completely forgetting that his original master was still sitting inside. He dutifully and respectfully led the way in front. Miss Shun, this subordinate will go and arrange for old mother to prepare another quiet and secluded dining room. Compared to Ji Chu's betrayal, Shuangshi's betrayal was even more thorough. She opened the curtain and saw a handsome face that was so cold that it could freeze. Son-in-law. The two words son-in-law made Mo Wushang's cold expression slightly better. He walked out of the carriage with cold and dignified steps. Shun Yueji sat on a round chair in a private room on the third floor. She saw old mother pushing the door open and coming in. Her eyes fell on her. Old mother saw that it was still this familiar face and immediately greeted her with a smile. Miss, it's you again. You didn't come with my husband this time? Shun Yueji didn't say anything. She just shrugged and motioned for her to look back. Old mother looked back and saw Mo Wushang's dark face walking in. His handsome facial features were like a sculpture, making it hard for people to separate from him. However, his eyes were frighteningly cold, making people not dare to stare at him too closely. After all, the old mother was a person who had been doing business for many years. She could see through the character of the people who came to this drunken joy house at a glance. Although this young master had an extraordinary bearing and was handsome, he was not someone who could be looked at too directly. Soon, she forced herself to withdraw her gaze from Mo Wushang and looked at Shun Yueji. Young lady and young master, please wait a moment. I'll order people to prepare the best dishes of my drunken joy brothel. I guarantee that they'll be served to you. Shun Yueji held her cheeks and narrowed her eyes. She didn't forget to remind her before she left, we're here to eat, not to do anything else. It's best if the food is served clean. The old mother was stunned. Then, she nodded and smiled. Don't worry, young lady. I still have this little bit of integrity. The old mother retreated respectfully. Shen Yueji glanced at the man standing not far away, pulled over a round chair, and patted it. Mo Wushang immediately walked towards her and sat down beside her. The emperor said that he will be back in 3 or 4 days. Including today, I have been back for 2 days. If there are no accidents, the emperor should be back at the general's mansion tomorrow or the day after tomorrow to bring me back to the palace. The man's eyes turned cold. Shen Yueji poked him with her finger. What's with your expression? I'm reminding you that when the emperor returns to the general's mansion, you're not allowed to sneak in. At that time, my father will definitely arrange for the emperor to live in the same room as me. You. Chapter 295. I'm doing this for the sake of our future, and even more for the sake of the general's mansion. Hearing her say the word future, the man's dark eyes flashed and he looked directly at the girl's delicate white face. Miss, look, it's young Master Shangguan. The man moved his thin lips and was about to reply. Suddenly, she heard Double Happiness's shout from the window. Following Double Happiness's guidance, Shen Yueji got up from the man's lap and walked to the window to look at the opposite second floor. The man was dressed in a white robe, and a bold woman was hanging upside down on his arm. If Shen Yueji hadn't recognized that face at first glance, she would have found it hard to believe that the man who repeatedly promised her affectionately that he only had feelings for her turned around and took another woman into the Drunken Joy building. Looking at the woman's figure, especially her appearance, Shen Yueji had a sense of déjà vu. She tried hard to find this person in the original body's mind. Isn't this the second daughter of the Zhongsun family, Zhongsun Wuyan? Beside her, Double Happiness said. Zhongsun Wuyan's beauty was not as good as Zhongsun Wuyue's, but she was also the daughter of a humble family. Because she was born of a concubine, her reputation in the capital had always been inferior before Zhongsun Wuyue entered the palace. Until Zhongsun Wuyue entered the palace, the eldest daughter of the family was gone, and she was the second daughter. Slowly, she gained some reputation in the capital and began to have some status among the daughters of some aristocratic families. How did Zhongsun Wuyan get together with young Master Shangguan? And seeing them enter the room so intimately, it could be imagined what men and women who came to the Drunken Joy building wanted to do when they entered a room alone, especially on the second floor. Double Happiness angrily stared at the two people who entered the room. The door was closed, blocking the view. Miss, there is no good person in the Zhongsun family. This Zhongsun Wuyan must have taken a fancy to young Master Shangguan's identity and outstanding appearance. You can't let her trick succeed. In the capital, before this, the matter of Shangguan Yu's infatuation with Shen Yueji, the eldest daughter of the general's mansion, was not a strange thing. But after Shen Yueji entered the palace, this matter slowly became a conversation after tea and gradually faded away. Zhongsun Wuyan must have known that Shangguan Yu was rejected by her, so she used this opportunity to climb into his bed. In order to achieve her goal, the daughter of an aristocratic family would use all kinds of methods. It was not a rare thing, but some men were willing to fall for it. That was their own problem. Shen Yueji would never forget the look in Shangguan Yu's eyes when he was rejected by her in the general's mansion. Undisguised hatred and revenge. She shook her head and quickly retracted her gaze. That's his own business. Now that he's conscious and hasn't been drugged, he can be with whoever he wants. Moreover, it's clear that the two of them are in love. Although Zhongsun Wuyan is the daughter of a concubine, she is still a beauty. If the two of them help each other, Miss, this servant would rather young Master Shangguan find a woman from the Drunken Joy brothel than have him get involved with the people of the Zhongsun family. None of the people of the Zhongsun family are good. Young Master Shangguan just loves. Chapter 296. The young miss didn't like him in the first place. If he did this, wouldn't it be obvious that the young miss hated him? Moreover, I also heard that Zhongsun Wuyan's private life is very messy. I don't know how many men she has had an affair with, and she has an infectious disease. Miss, you can't let this little bitch ruin Master Shangguan. Oh, really? Shen Yueji raised her eyebrows. Infectious disease. This sentence had a hidden meaning, and she quickly figured out where he was referring to. But in her heart, she really didn't have any feelings for Shangguan Yu. Besides, she had rejected him. He couldn't not have the ability to find a woman to entertain him, could he? Besides, she didn't intend to occupy him. It had nothing to do with her who he slept with or who he married. From Shuangshi's words, it seemed that he could marry anyone but Zhongsun Wuyan. Her head hurt again. But what did it have to do with her? Forget it. Looking at Double Happiness's expectant eyes, she just took it as giving her face. In the future, it was Shangguan Yu's business who he married and who he slept with. It was fine as long as the woman of Zhongsun family couldn't marry into the Shangguan family. What Shangguan Yu wanted was a diligent and thrifty wife who was gentle and virtuous, not a scheming woman who had affairs with many men and had ulterior motives to marry into the Shangguan family. Just for the sake of his infatuation with the deity all these years, Shen Yueji persuaded herself in her heart. Miss, this Zhongsun Wuyan once whipped you before. Do you still remember? Whipped me? The deity? At that time, Miss was wholeheartedly focused on the Prince Regent. Zhongsun Wuyan suddenly lashed out from the crowd when Miss passed by. If I hadn't reacted in time, the whip would have hit Miss's face. Miss's face would have been disfigured. At that time, Zhongsun Wuyan refused to admit it. She said that she didn't do it. Someone framed her. In fact, back then, Zhongsun Wuya had colluded with her. She wanted to ruin your beautiful face. Miss, was there such a thing? Shen Yueji's eyes were dangerous. She narrowed her eyes. If that was really the case, she wouldn't be meddling in Shangguan Yu's business anymore. Zhongsun Wuyan wanted to marry into the Shangguan mansion, but she wouldn't let her get what she wanted. She was avenging the original owner of this body. Go. She pushed the door open and was about to leave. Behind them, Ji Chu watched as they chatted as if there was no one else around until they left. He looked worriedly at his master, who was sitting quietly at the side. Master, Miss Shen has gone. I know. You know? If it was in the past, Master would have long been filled with jealousy, but why was he so calm today? He was so calm that he thought he had seen a ghost. This was so unlike his master. Mo Wushang propped up his chin and leaned against the tea table. He watched the young girl's slender back until she disappeared around the corner. Only then did he withdraw his gaze. She took a sip of the teacup she had just used. How can a mere Shangguan Yu compare to my beauty, virtuous, pure and clean? Ji Chu, fuck. What did he hear? Didn't Master hate it when people called him beautiful? Beautiful, virtuous, pure and clean. This, wasn't virtuous used to describe women? Ji Chu had a headache and held his forehead. It was over. Had Master been turned gay by Miss Shen? However, there was still more horror to come. Ji Chu looked at the servants of Drunken Joy brothel coming up with food. As soon as the plate of prawns was served, his master immediately began to peel the prawns and put the peeled prawns on a clean plate. He didn't need to think to know who the prawns were for. That serious expression, that skillful technique, Ji Chu bowed his head in resignation. Chapter 297. In the wing room on the second floor. It's normal for a man to have 3 wives and 4 concubines since ancient times. Young Master Shangguan only has Shen Yueji in his heart, but he has never received any response from the beauty. Yang knows that young Master Shangguan's heart is in pain like being pricked by a needle. Zhongsun Wuyan pushed the man to the bed, her slender jade-like hands making a gesture on the man's chest. Her fingers quickly slid through the half of the robe and slipped inside. She whispered in the man's ear, "Sometimes, women just don't like good or bad. The more you rely on her, the more she doesn't put you in her eyes. But, when you wholeheartedly gave your heart to someone else, she felt unreconciled. Young Master Shangguan, I have seen this kind of woman many times. Your infatuation, I can see it with my own eyes. Otherwise, why would I help you to test Shen Yueji's heart? My sister and Shen Yueji were as close as sisters. Even I know Shen Yueji's character. If she knows that young Master Shangguan and I have an affair, if she has you in her heart, she will definitely come looking for you angrily. At that time." She smiled slightly. "You can know whether she has you in her heart or not." She leaned over and kissed the man's lips. "Young Master Shangguan, you don't have to feel sorry for her. She has already become the Emperor's woman, but you still keep your chastity for her. Moreover, it's not surprising that a man has several women. What do you think?" Shangguan Yu didn't speak and let her press him. Before this, when she found him, she had said a lot. In the past, he was most disdainful of such means, but when he thought of Shen Yueji's strange attitude towards him and her indifferent eyes, what she said was right, his heart felt as if it was pricked by a needle. For her, he carefully followed by her side, sacrificed so much for her, learned martial arts for her, and suffered all these years, all without complaint or regret, just to make her happy. But in the end, what did he get in return? Time after time of indifference, time after time of sarcasm and sarcasm. Yes, why was it that he had to be the one paying the price every single time? Every single time, he had to carefully care about her feelings, afraid that he would make her unhappy, but she had never looked him in the eye. After so many years of infatuation, he was already tired. Especially if he couldn't get any response from her, his infatuation would turn into hatred. Intense hatred. He turned over and pressed Zhongsun Wuyan under his body. Looking at such a beautiful and intelligent woman, he waved his hand and tore apart the thin dress on her body. He put one hand on her soft body without any cover. His eyes were calm and indifferent, and the corners of his mouth hooked up into a gentle smile. "You are right. A man should have 3 wives and 4 concubines. No matter what, since you have lost your chastity to me today, I will take responsibility for you until the end. Although I can't give you the position of the first wife, the status of a concubine is enough to match you." Zhongsun Wuyan was delighted to hear that. Although the Shangguan family wasn't an official's family, they were one of the few wealthy families in the capital city. Their business was very big, and it was many times better than the children of the officials' families in the capital city. Moreover, Shangguan Yu was handsome and the only male in the Shangguan family. He didn't have any wives or concubines, so if he married her, she would be no different from the mistress of the Shangguan family. To her, this was a gift from the heavens. Chapter 298. For someone as outstanding as young Master Shangguan, there will definitely be countless women flocking to fight for him. In the past, Shangguan Yu hated this kind of woman the most. Watching her red lips open and close, his vision gradually blurred, and his face slowly overlapped with Shen Yueji's. Finally, there was some warmth in his eyes, and he gently stroked the girl's face. He lowered his body and kissed her heavily. His big hands walked fiercely and gently on her naked body, gradually stroking her beautiful jade-like long legs, and gradually moving up. "Oh," Zhongsun Wuyan murmured uncontrollably, and her hands unbuttoned his clothes. Soon, the clothes covering their bodies were gradually reduced. Dry wood and raging fire lingered endlessly. Zhongsun Wuyan's heart was filled with endless joy. She didn't expect that she would succeed in seducing Shangguan Yu. Sure enough, men were all the same. Shangguan Yu was the same. She knew where his weakness was and what he wanted, so she didn't waste so much time talking to him. From the beginning, he looked at her coldly. To the end, when he heard her mention Shen Yueji and said that she could help him get Shen Yueji, he stopped. Men were not only easy to deceive, but also pitifully stupid. It was the first time for this man, and she got such a perfect man so easily. Zhongsun Wuyan boldly wrapped her legs around the man's strong waist. As long as she seduced Shangguan Yu, she could marry into the Shangguan family and become the hostess of the Shangguan family. She would no longer have to bear the anger of those concubines in the mansion. She would no longer have to play with them. "Young Master Shangguan. Oh, give me. Give me." Her bold words stimulated the desire in the man's heart. He lingered in her arms, kissed her, and was about to straighten up and enter her. Bang! There was a loud noise. His figure suddenly froze. Zhongsun Wuyan was startled, and instinctively pulled the brocade quilt to cover her body. Then she looked timidly and resentfully at the person who spoiled her plan at the door. When she saw Shen Yueji, her little face, which had not yet faded from crimson, suddenly turned pale. Then, he looked at Shangguan Yu. He was obviously flustered. He hurriedly put on his clothes, but at this moment, the more anxious he was, the more he couldn't dress properly. This was the first time he had lost his composure and panicked. His white robe was tied into a few knots on his body. He didn't even dare to look at Shin Yueji's face. Yes, just a second ago, he said that he loved her, that he wouldn't marry anyone but her, and that he was willing to do anything for her. But in the next second, he almost, thinking of this, his eyes were full of annoyance. It was all his fault. He shouldn't have listened to Jongsun Wuyen's words. This time, she had seen it with her own eyes. He was afraid that she would hate him even more. What? Did I come at a bad time? Spoiling their plans? Young Master Shangwon, are you still able to wear these clothes or not? If you really can't put it on, why don't you let the one lying under you put it on for you? The cold and sarcastic words made Shangwon Yu's heart ache. He hurriedly put on his robe, got out of bed, and walked to her. His expression was full of panic, as if he had been caught having an affair outside by his wife. Listen to my explanation. Shin Yueji curled her lips into a smile and gestured to him. Seeing this, Shangwon Yu was instantly silent. Chapter 299. Young Master Shangwon, you don't have to explain to me. You and I have nothing to do with each other. You've held back for more than 20 years. It's natural for you to find a woman to vent some of your feelings. But, she raised her eyebrows slightly. Young Master Shangwon, don't you know what kind of woman you can sleep with and what kind of woman you can't sleep with? Listening to her bold and naked words, Shangwon Yu wanted to find a hole to hide in. His face was completely pale. He had heard of Jongsun Wuyen's reputation in the capital. But just now, with her instigation, he thought she was Shin Yueji, so he couldn't control himself. He stepped forward and wanted to hold Shin Yueji's hand. Shin Yueji avoided him cleverly, walked to a round chair and sat down. I came here to remind young Master Shangwon that although your Shangwon family is not a family of officials, compared with the important officials in the capital, your Shangwon family has a lot of prestige. If you have a physical relationship with Jongsun Wuyen, it will be the face of your Shangwon family that will be lost. In other words, her slender fingers lightly knocked on the table. The crisp sound came into his ears, with the same undisguised sarcasm as her words. This woman didn't appear earlier or later, but appeared in front of young Master Shangwon at this time. Her purpose is obvious. The Jongsun family is a wolf's den. I advise young Master Shangwon, it's better to sharpen your eyes as soon as possible. Shin Yueji. The good thing was so close, but it was ruined by the sudden appearance of this bitch. Jongsun Wuyen's pretty face was ferocious. I don't think I've offended you. Young Master Shangwon is infatuated with you. It's you who trampled on his heart again and again. Now he wants to start a new life. Why do you stop him again and again? Or, Shin Yueji, you have selfish motives. In the past, Jongsun Wuyen was afraid of her. After all, there was a difference between the legitimate wife and the concubine, and she was the apple of Shun his eye. Especially now that she entered the palace, her status was higher than others. Jongsun Wuyen was jealous and afraid of her. She felt aggrieved and flustered. She had finally succeeded in her plan, but it had been forcefully destroyed by her. She might as well go all out, and her face was full of resentment. When Shangwon Yu heard the word selfish, he subconsciously looked at Shin Yueji, and there was a flicker of light in his sad eyes. Was Jia really selfish? Did that mean that Jia still had a place for him in her heart? However, selfish. Shin Yueji suddenly smiled and raised her eyebrows at her. You're right, I do have my own selfish motives. If Master Shangwon wants a woman, I can personally choose a suitable one for him. As for you, I just don't like you and want to ruin your plans. What can you do to me? You will suffer retribution. Jongsun Wuyen was so stifled by her shameless words that she almost fainted. Even if I have to suffer retribution, it will be behind you. Chapter 300. She knew that Jongsun Wuyen intended to smear her reputation in front of Shangwon Yu. Shin Yueji didn't care at all and smiled slightly. Your sister only has herself to blame. As for you, you and your sister are almost the same. I don't have such a familiar relationship with you. What sisterly love? How come I don't remember that my parents gave me an older sister or younger sister? You. Jongsun Wooyen struggled to jump down from the bed. Shin Yueji narrowed her eyes and didn't move. Sure enough, at the moment when she waved her hand toward herself, the man in white blocked in front of her. Her hand, which was raised in midair, was also imprisoned by the man's big palm. Young Master Shangwon, Jongsun Wooyen looked up at him in disbelief. Shangwon Yu's eyes were so cold that it could make people fall into a cellar. He looked at her coldly. Bang! Her entire body flew out uncontrollably. The clothes that hadn't been put on slid down the ambiguous mark on her snow-white neck. When he saw the ambiguous mark on Jongsun Wooyen's neck, it was obviously left by the man just now. Not only did Shin Yueji notice it, but even Shangwon Yu's face suddenly turned pale when he saw the kiss mark on the woman's neck. His tall body was about to collapse. He was now full of regret and hatred. From the beginning, he shouldn't have stopped because of Jongsun Wooyen's words. Young Master Shangwon, you've said it before. You've said that you'll take responsibility for me. You've said that you'll welcome me into the mansion as a concubine. You've promised me all of this in bed. This time, Jongsun Wooyen had completely thrown away her dignity. She saw that the two people's gazes were on her, so she deliberately exposed the mark on her neck and looked at Shin Yueji with a proud expression. The girl sitting by the tea table rubbed her eyebrows with a headache. I haven't slept yet, have I? Why should I take responsibility? How about? She looked at the pale-faced teenager not far away and smiled. Young Master Shangwon, do you want to enjoy the unfinished business? Yueji, you know my feelings for you. I can't bear young Master Shangwon's sincerity. Do you still want this woman? If you don't want it, I'll take it with me. Shin Yueji couldn't be bothered to continue this topic with him. She squinted at Jongsun Wooyen in the corner and spoke indifferently. Shangwon Yu only looked at her and did not speak. A thin line of blood appeared on his tightly pursed lips. He stared at her without blinking. How could she be so calm? If he still had some intention to test her just now, he would be happy because of her sudden intrusion, and he would think that she might still have him in her heart, but now, she had become a spectator, and the disdain in her eyes stung his eyes. His heart throbbed in pain, as if it was being ripped out alive. After a long while, she heard his hoarse voice mixed with suppressed anger. Where do you plan to take her? Young Master Shangwon, you don't have to worry about this. This is a personal grudge between me and second Miss Jongsun. Since it's a personal grudge, I'll definitely find a place where no one is around to settle it. No. Young Master Shangwon, save me, please save me, don't let her take me away, she's up to no good, she'll kill me. Young Master Shangwon, save me. Chapter 301. Yang really admires young Master Shangwon. Please save me. Don't let her take me away, young Master Shangwon. The girl cried like a pear blossom in the rain. A large part of her delicate makeup was ruined. She looked embarrassed and pitiful. Shangwon Yu looked at her indifferently. His complicated eyes fell on Shin Yueji for a long time. Shin Yueji crossed her arms. If you feel sorry for this girl, you can keep her. If you want to take her as a concubine, it's up to you. I've done my best. I've said what I should say. Of course. She shrugged indifferently. If you want to protect her, just do it. If Double Happiness didn't ask me to come here today, I wouldn't have asked you even if you slept with her here. After saying this, she turned around and left. Shin Yueji. Shangwon Yu cried out to stop her. Shin Yueji didn't stop. Shangwon Yu grabbed her hand in a panic. I won't marry her. I just thought she was you. He explained in panic. You have to believe me. I only like you. I won't take a concubine. Today was just an accident. I promise you, it won't happen again. If you want to take her away, I won't stop you. If she makes you angry, I'll kill her for you. This time, Jongsun Wooyen's face was pale and bloodless. She didn't expect that Shangwon Yu would lower himself to this extent in order to make Shin Yueji happy. Was this still the elegant and gentle eldest young Master Shangwon that she knew? Shin Yueji squinted at him. The man's eyes were earnest and sincere. There seemed to be countless words in them. She slightly raised her lips. Double happiness. I'm here. Throw her out. Yes. Throw. Jongsun Wooyen wouldn't forget that she said the word throw. She hadn't put on her clothes. After hearing Shen Yueji's words, she became more flustered and hurriedly got up to put on her clothes. Double happiness moved faster than her. He directly lifted her up and threw her down the street on the second floor. Ah, she screamed. It caused a lot of sensation. Especially after she threw him away, her scattered clothes were blown away by the wind. Most of the onlookers recognized her and immediately surrounded her. Jongsun Wooyen was so ashamed that she didn't want to show her face. She casually picked up a tattered piece of clothing to cover her body and fled barefoot. Jongsun Wooyen has had affairs with many men, and her body has long been infected with an illness. Young Master Shangwon, you can vent if you want, but don't ruin yourself because of this. After saying this, Shen Yueji no longer looked at him and left. From the beginning to the end, when Jongsun Wooyen was thrown down to the second floor by her double happiness, he didn't even ask a single word. It was as if he had long removed Jongsun Wooyen from the matter, becoming an irrelevant person. This time, Shangwon Yu did not stop her. She had her own reasons for the initial joy. Otherwise, she wouldn't have come at this time and thrown Jongsun Wooyen down. But now, Shangwon Yu's heart was chilled to the bone. She was just returning the favor to him. Such an embarrassing scene was witnessed by her. Shangwon Yu knew that he had no face to pester her at this time. Chapter 302. Are you satisfied? After leaving the room, Shen Yueji glanced at Shuangxi, who couldn't hide his pride. Jongsun Wooyen will be in trouble this time. She has lost the face of the Jongsun family. It seems that Lord Jongsun won't be able to raise his head in the capital in a short time. Hearing that, Shen Yueji sneered. That's not necessarily the case. The Jiyu family is in the limelight now. Their momentum far surpasses the Jongsun family. How can the clowns of the Jongsun family compare to the Jiyu family? She thought of the man's handsome and calculating face. Shuangxi. Miss. How much do you know about Shangwon Yu? For as long as this servant can remember, young Master Shangwon has always liked to be by your side. All these years, this servant has seen it with my own eyes. In terms of talent and knowledge, there aren't many people in Feng country who can compare to young Master Shangwon. But Master Shangwon's behavior today is really disappointing. Previously, this servant was crying out for injustice for young Master Shangwon. Now, it seems that he is the same as those men. He keeps saying that he likes Miss, but in the end, he is still having an affair. When this servant returns, I must tell Madam and General about this. Since her rebirth, Shen Yueji rarely panicked, especially when she thought of the way Shangwon Yu looked at her. There was remorse and possessiveness in his eyes. That possessiveness was like a toy. If he didn't get it, he wouldn't give up. I'm afraid this Shangwon Yu is not easy to deal with. Don't worry, Miss Master Shangwon and the General have been good friends for decades. They won't fight over such a small thing. Besides, you have already entered the palace, and Master Shangwon has been persuading Master Shangwon to give up. Shen Yueji couldn't explain it clearly in a few words. She shook her head. We've been out for so long. That guy must be anxious. Miss, are you talking about the son-in-law? Hearing that, Shen Yueji smiled and didn't get angry. You're getting more and more comfortable with calling him son-in-law. Although the man's eyes were cold and inhuman, there was a gentleness like the spring breeze and drizzle in those icy eyes. They were black, like bright stones, emitting light and radiance. What she liked was the purity of his black eyes, without any impurities. When he rubbed against her affectionately and called her name, even the coldness in his eyes faded, leaving only a gentle warmth. Such sincerity. Shen Yueji suddenly smiled and pushed the door in. When she saw that the man was still sitting in his original position, and in front of him, there was a plate of slowly peeled shrimp. He covered it carefully to prevent the heat from evaporating. He was waiting for her return with great care. Although there were many men in the world, she realized that it wasn't a bad thing to have Mo Wushang accompanying her for the rest of her life. He was like a replica of the woman from the Feng nation, patiently waiting for her husband to return and personally serving him food and peeling prawns. She took a few steps towards the man. He picked up a piece of prawn and put it in his mouth, chewing slowly. Regent's speed of peeling prawns is really getting better and better. I've only left for a while and you've already peeled so much. Ji Chu at the side. Wasn't he? The way he peeled prawns to vent made him suspect that his master's previous confident words were all nonsense. Mo Wushang peeled a prawn and put it in her mouth. Shen Yueji opened her mouth quickly. The man's obscure eyes fell on her red lips for a moment. You have to remember that I'm a match. Chapter 303. Shen Yueji looked at the man's handsome face, which didn't seem to be angry. There was a hint of anger in his handsomeness. She felt that he was extremely adorable and couldn't help but pinch his handsome face. I know. You're the perfect match. You're the perfect match. She promised again and again. Although there was no relationship between her and Shangguan Yu, she felt inexplicably happy to see the man acting like a jealous little wife. She picked up a piece of prawn and brought it to his lips. The man opened his mouth obediently. Let's go back if you're full. We've been out long enough today. Ji Chu almost burst into tears. He could guarantee that his master only peeled prawns for Miss Shen and didn't eat a single piece of food. Apart from that mouthful of prawns that Miss Shen fed his master. But Mo Wushang nodded happily. It's getting late. Let's go back and sleep. Ji Chu. The four of them just went downstairs. When they walked to the door, the man was dressed in white. His pale face had yet to regain its color. Shen Yueji frowned when she saw who was blocking the way. She was dissatisfied. Why? Shangguan Yu's unfriendly gaze fell on Mo Wushang, but his words were directed at Shen Yueji. Why can he do it, but why can't I? 3 black lines appeared on her forehead. Shen Yueji looked at him speechlessly. Just because he is the regent of the Foam country who is on equal footing with the emperor. Is it because of his identity? You can be with him just because of his identity. Shangguan Yu's expression was full of grief. At this moment, his heart was already full of holes. He couldn't understand how he couldn't beat Mo Wushang other than his identity. Although his Shangguan family wasn't an official's family, they were still rich in the capital. He could satisfy whatever she wanted. Even if it was the stars and the moon in the sky. She always rejected him because she was the emperor's woman, but here she was with another man. Jia. His voice was almost pleading. What happened today is all my fault. I don't know how to explain it to you. Please forgive me. I swear that this kind of thing will never happen again. Shen Yueji looked at him indifferently. This matter has nothing to do with me. If Master Shangguan has nothing else to say, please step aside. The regent and I have to go back. Shangguan Yu took a deep breath so that his eyes would not be so red. They were so red that he wanted to kill someone. He forced a smile and said, I'm not here to find Jia, but to find the regent. I have something to say to the regent alone. Shen Yueji frowned and looked at him impatiently. Why did this man never stop pestering her? She was just about to reject on behalf of Mo Wushang. She wasn't worried about Mo Wushang, but himself. If he was alone with Mo Wushang, wouldn't he be beaten half to death by this man? She was here to suppress him, so he was very obedient. If she wasn't here, Shangguan Yu wouldn't get any advantage at all. Jia doesn't want to hear me talk or see me. You can't reject me even when I have the chance to talk to the regent, can you? You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.